Welcome. Tonight's story is a slow descent into memory, silence, and something that waits just beyond what we understand. You'll follow Lydia, a woman drawn back to a house she hasn't seen in over 20 years. A house hidden in the hills, one she barely remembers. It called her back with only a few words, no signature, no return address. Just, the house on Ember Hollow waits. What she finds is not just a place lost in time, but a place that remembers her, one that whispers through the walls, leaves folded paper cranes beneath her pillow, and holds secrets buried beneath the floor. This is not a story of screams or shadows. It is quiet, lingering, like a dream you wake from too slowly. So settle in, let your breath deepen, and allow the house to open its doors to you. This is The House That Waits. The car hummed softly along the winding country road, its headlights cutting narrow beams through the dusk. Lydia had driven for hours, leaving behind the noise of the city in exchange for the quiet loneliness of the hills. It wasn't a place that appeared on any popular map. She had found it in a letter, one that arrived without a stamp, in handwriting she didn't recognize. There was no name, no return address, only a scribbled line below it. The house on Ember Hollow waits. She hadn't lived there in over 20 years. As the sun dipped below the horizon, the shadows thickened. Trees arched over the narrow road, their branches like fingers clasped in prayer. Eventually, the forest gave way to a clearing, and in that clearing stood the house, tall, narrow, and asleep. It hadn't changed. She stepped out, the gravel crunching softly beneath her shoes. The air smelled faintly of moss, old rain, and something else. Something dry and musty, like pages in a forgotten book. She didn't knock. The key, just where she remembered it, rested beneath the loose stone in the flower bed. The door opened with a sigh, and the warmth of the interior, dry, still, and faintly dusty, greeted her like an old memory. Inside, the house was silent. Each step stirred motes of dust that danced lazily in the glow of the single lamp she turned on in the hallway. The wallpaper, faded with age, still bore the same floral pattern she'd traced with her fingers as a child. The grandfather clock in the foyer had long stopped ticking, its pendulum suspended like breath held too long. She walked slowly, letting the house unfold. The kitchen, the parlor, the narrow staircase leading up. Nothing had moved, and yet something had changed. She couldn't place it. A subtle shift in the air, a wrongness so small it could hide between seconds. It wasn't fear exactly, just a quiet knowing that the house was no longer just wood and dust, that it had noticed her. She went upstairs. The hallway was long, and the shadows moved differently here. The doors to the rooms were all ajar, slightly, just enough to suggest that someone might have left them open moments before. But they were empty. Her old bedroom was still painted pale blue. The bed was made. The toys sat quietly on shelves where she'd left them decades ago. She sat on the bed and closed her eyes. Far below, in the parlor, the floorboards creaked softly. It took her longer than expected to fall asleep that night. The house, though quiet, had its own language. The settling of beams, the faint moan of wind through the chimney, the hush of leaves brushing the glass. But sometime after midnight, she woke. The sound was small, almost imperceptible, a faint murmur from behind the walls. She sat up, listening. It came again, soft, like a voice wrapped in cotton. She followed it. Through the hallway, past the old attic door, she stopped at the room no one had spoken about since her childhood. The door was closed, its surface untouched by time. It had always been locked. Tonight, it stood slightly open. Inside, The room was dark, unlit, the windows covered. The whispering ceased the moment she stepped in. For a long moment, there was nothing but stillness. Then, as her eyes adjusted, she saw it. A chair in the center of the room, and on it, a small wooden box. Her hands moved before her thoughts caught up. She lifted the lid. Inside, a collection of folded paper cranes, each identical, each perfectly shaped. And on each, written in that same unfamiliar handwriting, were names. The topmost crane read Lydia May Holloway. The second, Thorne Holloway, her grandfather, dead now 20 years. The third, Emmeline Grace Holloway, a name she barely remembered, someone whispered about when she was small. And below that, more. Dozens of names, all Holloways, all gone. She replaced the lid gently. The room, though still, felt suddenly cramped, as though the air had thickened, as though someone, or something, was holding its breath behind her. She turned back toward the door. It was closed. Morning came, though the sun never quite pierced the clouds. Lydia moved through the house as though sleepwalking, her mind heavy with questions she couldn't articulate. The box remained in the whispering room. She hadn't touched it again. Instead, she wandered. She found old family portraits tucked in a drawer, black and white faces staring out from behind glass. She recognized none of them, but their eyes. There was something wrong with their eyes. Not in the photos, but in how she remembered them. Hadn't that one blinked? In the attic, she found an old trunk filled with letters, hundreds, all written in the same hand. The paper had yellowed with age, but the ink was dark, fresh, almost wet. She unfolded one and read, "Thank you for remembering. The house is pleased. It remembers too." She folded it back and closed the trunk. That night she dreamed of the house, not as it was, but as it had once been. Bright and bustling, full of voices and footsteps and music. People danced in the parlor, laughed in the garden, and beneath it all, something waited below the floorboards. Watching, listening, smiling. When she awoke, the box of cranes was beside her bed. On the third night, she stopped trying to sleep. The whispers had become clearer. No longer muffled, they threaded through the halls like candle smoke. They said her name. They spoke of the past. They asked questions she didn't understand and offered answers she hadn't wanted to find. "Do you remember the cellar, Lydia? What did you leave behind? It's still waiting." There was no cellar, she thought. Not that she remembered. But she went looking. In the pantry behind a shelf, she found it. A small door she didn't know had been there, low to the ground, locked. She found the key in the pocket of an old coat in the closet, the one her mother used to wear. The key turned easily. Beyond the door, a narrow stone staircase spiraled downward. The air grew colder with each step, heavy with the scent of damp earth and something older. The cellar was not like the rest of the house. It was smooth, carved, not built. The walls were etched with symbols she couldn't read but felt she understood. A circle, a hand, a door, and in the center, a chair, not empty. A figure sat, still and silent. Not alive, but not quite dead, wrapped in darkness like a cocoon. Its face, when she saw it, was hers. She fled, up the stairs, through the door, into the hall. But the hallway was longer now, twisting, wrong. And behind her, the whispering had begun again. Days passed, though no sun rose. Lydia stopped keeping track of time. The clocks no longer moved. The light stayed dim, eternal dusk just outside the windows. The house had no need for time. It pulsed with memory, with breath. The cranes followed her now, more each day. She'd find them in her shoes, her coat pocket, folded beneath her pillow. Some with names she knew, some with names she hadn't learned yet. A child named Sarah Holloway. A boy named Elias. a woman named Lydia Grace. Her own name repeated again and again. And when she asked the house why, it answered, not in voice, but in understanding. She was becoming part of it, not in body, but in story. One evening, though there were no evenings anymore, she stood in front of the mirror in the hallway. Her reflection did not move. She tilted her head. It didn't. And then slowly, it smiled. The mirror cracked. She did not scream, because she remembered. Not everything, just enough. The house had been waiting, for years, for her return. And she had come, as all Holloways did. They found the car weeks later, abandoned at the edge of Ember Hollow. The keys still in the ignition, the passenger seat dusted with paper cranes. No one remembered a Lydia Holloway. No records, no relatives, only the house, still standing, still watching, waiting for the next whisper.